All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. This is the Hear the Unheard Digital Summit. My special guest interviewee for the day. I am so thrilled for this conversation. This is the one and only, my father, Bob Turner. I'm super excited to have you. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us this afternoon.
Of course, thank you.
Now, I'm so excited. Obviously, you're my dad. We have gone through the ringer, let's just say, on the soccer realm over these, a lengthy period of time. Let's bring the viewers who have tuned in up to speed. What is your connection or involvement with the soccer realm? How do you fit into this mix as a youth sports expert?
I don't know if I'd be called an expert, but I have, starting back, been over 25 years involved with Presidio Soccer League, which is a gaming league in San Diego. I have been the president of Presidio Soccer since 2009. I am now the executive director for the last 6 months after being president since 2009. I am also the president of Cal South, which is the governing body, Cal South Soccer Association for Southern California, the governing body for youth soccer. Does that help you?
Yeah, primarily here in the Southern California region. Once again, obviously, yes, Presidio Soccer League in San Diego, which is a part of Cal South. Let's unpack Presidio Soccer League first. So let's talk about the scope, the impact of what soccer is, how many teams you oversee, and how many members are a part of the Presidio Soccer League.
We have about 1,350 teams. It's a little over between 20 and 21,000 players. Competitive players. We do a little bit more on the rec side. So our job from a Presidio standpoint is to game these. We have 52 clubs within Imperial Valley to the ocean, and from Temecula to the border. We have 52 clubs that these 1,350 teams play for, and our job is to game them. I have been doing that, been on the board of Presidio for a little over 25 years. And so I take this job very, very seriously and personally for these 20+ thousand kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, as you can tell, hopefully the viewers can tell, that is a huge stretch of land and a whole lot of members that you're having to put their best interest first, let's just say. Let's talk a little bit about SDDA before we switch over to Cal South. What is SDDA and who are you serving, or what members do you serve there?
SDDA is San Diego Developmental Academy. That is the high level of Presidio, the highest play level. It's included in those 1,350-ish teams. There's about 400 teams that play at that level. We have had, I think we're in our 6th year of the SDDA. And so again, that's the higher level. Those are kids that potentially are going off to college, doing some recruiting. The ones that are just maybe at a little bit higher level and commitment level than some of the others. We do those at the 9v9 and 11v11 or 7v7. Younger age kids do not play at that level. So again, it's a little bit higher commitment, and they're probably being affected by this maybe a little bit more than some of the others.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems to be, a recurring theme on the recruiting side. And that was an interesting perspective from the SDDA, how recruiting is being impacted for these higher level, higher caliber players, those players who are looking to play their final year of high school and transition into the collegiate ranks, to the professional ranks, what the impact looks like on that perspective. All right, so let's pivot now to the Cal South. Let's talk a little bit about that region, the scope of what you oversee now as the president of Cal South.
So I was newly elected in March as the president of Cal South. Last year we had about 136,000 kids. This year, probably with the pandemic, we would have somewhere, our budgeting goal was about, this is all Southern California. And again, I've only few months on the job here, and it's been a whirlwind. trying now to take in these 100,000+ kids and try to represent them in the manner that I've represented the Presidio kids for all of these years. So it's a challenge, to say the least.
Yeah, I bet. You're so used to doing things at the Presidio rank and almost earning the respect of your members with the hard work and the tireless effort that you put in there. Now that's sort of exponentially grown with the additional territories that you're now overseeing at the Cal South ranks. So now let's talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the impact it's having, right? We'll focus on, let's keep this high level. Let's keep this on, obviously the state mandated guidelines are constantly shifting. So there's a whole lot to unpack with how you as Presidio and then you as Cal South are managing, adopting, kind of conforming to this fluid situation. But what are your thoughts on the state guidelines and how have they impacted Presidio and Cal South?
So actually, unfortunately, there are no state mandated guidelines for youth sports, so which is causing a little bit of, I would say, chaos amongst our Cal South and the 10 counties that Cal South represents. San Diego County for one, LA County for another are open, playing under the day camp guidelines. So the state really doesn't have any guidelines in place. The counties are taking it upon themselves to say, okay, yes, you can be under the camp guidelines, and those guidelines, are set up differently. They're really not set up for, I would say, sports in particular, even though a lot of them do have it. The YMCA's do sports. So I guess the goal would be for the state to come in and open up youth sports and come up with some mandated guidelines to make things a little bit less confusing for people and maybe more uniform, I would say.
Absolutely. And we've kind of touched on this with other interviewees. It seems like, especially here in the state of California, they're painting with a very broad stroke, right? Every business, every organization is sort of lumped under, one rule, regulation, mandate. So your restaurant is going to be treated the same as your barbershop, which is then treated the same as youth sports leagues. Fortunately, San Diego and LA are able to adapt and conform to those camp guidelines. What about the other 8 territories, the other 8 counties or sections that you have to oversee? How is this impacting them?
Most of them, unless they have some type of special waiver for certain clubs, most of them are not able to be on the field under these camp guidelines. Their county has chosen not to allow them to play under these camp guidelines. So we have a lot of players and kids that are just not on the field. And so that's, again, I think it's personally, I'm hoping that it's just a little bit of miscommunication or maybe understanding. I know it is at some of the county levels, understanding of what will youth soccer. My fight really is for all youth sports, even though much more so for youth soccer, because that's really what I'm involved in and that's what I know best. But I truly believe all outdoor youth sports under his mandates, as you mentioned, with restaurants and going to the beach and going to Costco or Vons or whatever, being out, those are indoors even, being outdoors with the guidelines that we have in place already that we're playing under in the counties that are open and the ones that were open. We actually meet or really exceed some of the mandates that they're doing. There's no reason that a kid cannot be outside, 6 feet apart, doing some of the training that they're doing when you can go to a restaurant or you can go outdoors and get your hair cut and you can do these other things. Is 15 minutes and 6 feet apart. We're never, for those of you that know soccer, you should never really be 15 minutes near somebody. Something's wrong if you're doing that. So I think that would be just much better if the governor would come in, change these, open up outdoor youth sports, put in some guidelines and let us manage them. We can actually do that job. Right now, you have so many kids and so much confusion. You have so many kids not on the field and then so much confusion because, again, as most people know the state will put their guidelines out, and the county will then come in and they can be more restrictive, but not less. And then the cities have their own, and then municipalities have their own. And right now it's really tough because they don't have the state coming in and actually setting any guidelines. So it's coming in some cases, not for soccer so much, at least not the Cal South that I know of, these things, but it's a free-for-all in some other sports because there is no mandates and people are sort of making up the rules as they go. I would really like people to see how we're running our practices and what we're doing for the protection of these kids to the best of our ability, in letting these kids come out and train.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of goes, one of the recurring themes of this here at the Unheard Digital Summit, it's process, right? If you get a process in place and you keep optimizing that process to see if that process works, I think that type of approach should be made for youth sports. And I think there's no better person in regards to creating that process or what that blueprint to success to reopening, specifically the soccer, was Tim Woodcock with the Liverpool FC International Academy here in SoCal. He had some really cool social distancing. He had some really cool drone footage of how they are keeping that safe and social distance conscious type of practice environment. What is Cal South doing as far as social distancing and creating a reopened environment? Is there anything in place if there does come a ordinance or something that says youth sports is reopened? Are you guys ready to go? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, we're ready to go. We have a return to play. We're updating the return to play as we speak because, again, this is kind of a fluid situation. The governor a couple of weeks ago mandated a mask must be worn throughout the state within 6 feet. So that's something that we had to come in and change. So we have an RTP, a return to play, protocols and process in place. We have different phases. So we have phase 0 for the ones that aren't on the field. Phase 1 really becomes part of no, for lack of better terms, and we need to change it because it's confusing, but any type of scrimmaging. And then there's a phase 3 and 4. 4 gets us back in the field and playing games and such. And so, we have those goals or have those, the RTP in place, return to play in place. What we have to wait for again is, for the state to open it up. We can pivot. And the counties, when they did open up these camps, was within a couple days and permits were done and we were, back on the field under this day camp guidelines. So if he were to set these guidelines, whatever they are, we'll adhere to them, work with the counties to do this. We're building something right now similar to what Tim, who I know very well, we're building some with a couple other clubs to be able to do some kind of maybe educate some people, including our health department here, as to what it really means for some of the terminology, such as scrimmaging. I don't think there's an understanding of what that means. So right now, depending on who you ask, that's what I mean by free for all. Some people think you can scrimmage, some people think you can't. I think we need to get that completely cleared up, and that might help. But until youth sports, again, as a whole are opened up, and again, I'm saying as a whole, but I mean outdoor youth sports, it's still going to be tough because you're going to have individual counties that aren't going to come in under this camp guideline. And at some point, this day camp situation may go away because usually this is set up for the summer. So I think right now, again, I guess I'm getting ahead of this, but right now, they need to take that big bucket of youth sports that are in the, not phase, whatever his thing is, 4 anyway, whatever the word, I'll think of it here in a second, for the state. And they need to take that big bucket of youth sports and come in and say, okay, we need to break this bucket of youth sports up and say, okay, here's the outdoor youth sports, here's the much more contact youth sports. Certain sports probably should not be opened at this time. I would agree with that. But there are certain sports that meet every criteria of going outdoors and being outside and the wind blowing and kids being separated, even if they're playing in a scrimmage or playing in a game, it still meets it. The number of people on the sideline, normally it's anybody can come. We're looking at 1 or 2 parents per player on a sideline rather than a whole family. We're ready to make this thing happen for the safety of the kids as much as possible.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that you guys are dialed in, ready to pivot when necessary. It is a very fluid situation. Let's talk a little bit about the impact, right? This is where you're going to have to put a number of different hats on. Being the president of both Cal South now and then the executive director of Presidio, you're being impacted by a number of fronts. You oversee players, parents, officials, coaches, club administrators. So there's a number of hats that I want to dive into or unpack here. But let's start with the actual clubs, the coaches, and the officials to begin with, right? What is the impact to clubs, specifically, the impact that clubs can't meet, teams can't meet, they can't get out and practice, they don't know what the season is going to look like moving forward. What is the impact at the club level?
Okay, so yeah, that's a loaded question because most people hate to hear this because it's youth sports and it is what it is. But these clubs, every one of these are a small business, some of them not so small. And so in Presidio, I'll speak more to that. And in Presidio, we have 52 clubs. Those 52 clubs are 52 individual businesses with some of them have offices, most all of them have paid coaches. Those are 52 individual businesses with a lot of people working. So from a business side, which some people aren't going to want to hear about, and my push has to be for both. We'll get into how it's affecting the kids because that's really where my bigger passion is, I guess. But from a business side and a club side, if we don't get back in these fields, we're going to have businesses going out of business. These clubs cannot maintain what we're doing right now. There's a lot of coaches that are getting paid. Some of it is their livelihood, and that's all they do. Most of them have maybe some other side job that they potentially don't have now. So the effect on those businesses, those clubs, the individual coaches, other people that work for the clubs, the impact is devastating for a lot of them. They're already out of jobs, and they're going to be, again, I know some people aren't going to feel sorry for that, for them on that side of it, because there's a lot of people out of work and there's a lot of people, their businesses have been impacted and will never come back. So, but it still is a fact that these are all businesses and they're a service, all of them are nonprofits servicing our youth. And so, I really believe our politicians in each county and our, from a business standpoint, probably should look at that and say, well, wait a second, we need to have something, again, has to be from a safety issue first, but there's got to be a way to be able to keep these businesses, these clubs afloat. And otherwise they're just going to go out of business. Some of them will be able to recover. But many of them won't.
And it's an interesting point you make as far as the small business aspect, because that's really what they are. Small businesses, obviously 52 of them in Presidio. And just like any business right now, they're being impacted and their clients are, being, suffered in some sense, and the business is struggling. However, this kind of segues perfectly into the second portion of this. The clients of these 52 small businesses are kids. They're the players, they're the athletes, they're the ones that need soccer, not need soccer like I need physical activity, but need soccer as in I need an outlet. I need a way to get out of the house. There's a lot to unpack with the impact to players. But let's talk a little bit about that. Have you heard, what is the feedback? Your ears to the ground, I imagine. How is COVID-19 impacting the players and the parents of those players?
So this is, again, a big one. And I have another hat that I wear because I am a parent of a player. I have a 14-year-old daughter that is being affected. Now, at least she's on the field practicing and, under a reduced, with the guidelines in place. But so I get to see it from all sides. And I do talk to these clubs on a regular basis. in San Diego and up in Orange County and LA, and the impact is huge. Taking this away from these kids is a drastic, mentally, emotionally, and physically, is very impacting. Taking school away from them, taking high school sports away from the high school kids is horrible. But if you, on top of that, you take this outlet away from them, they have nothing else. They need hope. They need the physical, mental, emotional outlet of going and playing. Again, I'm going to harp on this many times. I don't want to accuse of not caring about the kids, in a safe manner, and we can do that. But I do think that maybe that, and I think statistics are bearing it out more and more, the harm this is doing to kids by not having them playing could be worse than what this virus is actually causing. That's up for debate, and I don't really want to get into the political side of it, but I do know it's a huge impact, and there are kids being impacted every day. And if we do take this away and do not let them play, it's going to be that much worse. These kids having no outlet, there's a lot of things going on in houses right now that, these kids need that outlet. The parents need the outlet, the ones that want to play. Of course, some of them don't want to take the chance and don't want their child to go play, and we completely understand that, and this wouldn't be for them, and hopefully they'll come back in the future. But for the ones that do want to, and the ones that maybe aren't compromised, don't have any compromised situations at home, and their kids, they want them back on that field in a safe manner. We need to do this. We are absolutely, and again, this is a little political, but I believe that we are doing an injustice to the two segments of society that we're supposed to protect the most. The elderly, which we have not done a very good job with this, I think statistics bear out, and the youth. And we're kind of screwing both of them. And so we need to spend more time on taking care of the elderly. Has paved the way for all of us. And I know, Austin, don't be talking about me being elder. The elderly has paved the way for everything that we're doing. And we now are letting them down. The youth is our future. And what we're doing to them, and I don't have the right answer, and it's a big debate from a schooling standpoint, what we've done to them since the middle of March and given up 3 months worth of their schooling. And now we're going to come back in most places, do distance learning again. And I went through it. It really isn't the best, I can tell you, from a learning aspect. We are screwing up a whole group of kids that will take a long, long time to recover, if at all. So by doing this and not doing everything we can, me personally, that I can for sure, of getting these kids back on the field and giving them that outlet. Again, some of these kids are getting overweight. They're getting into other things. I have cases in my own family where there's some real depression issues going on. And it's something we need to be aware of, and we need to really figure out a way to get these kids on. I've told the coaches, or I've recommended to the coaches in Presidio for the most part, because I'm intimately, I've been built up a rapport with them forever, that their job right now and having these kids on the field, I don't really care about the soccer aspect of it. I wouldn't care about the baseball aspect of it. You're a counselor, you're there to listen, you're there to give them an outlet. There's these kids need us as adults to come in and help them. Right now, this unheard, the unheard voice is them. We are letting them down, and we need to be aware of this and do whatever we can do as the adults, supposedly the adults in the room. Dump the politics, the adults in the room. Let's come in and protect these kids. And so if anything comes of this, hopefully that's what it does. And we all need to do this. It's not just me or you or anybody else on the summit, or even the governor. We all need to come in and say, okay, wait a second. What are we doing? The school is a tough answer. That's a tough one. You have too many moving parts for that. So that's one I do have some ideas, and I've shared them with Santa Unified School District and talked to them. But that's a lot harder than this one. To me, this one is not that difficult. And so off of this, hopefully that we will get people to listen. The people need to listen. Our politicians, our media, our governor for sure needs to listen and come in and say, okay, instead of no, 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 what's yes? How can we make this happen? And how can we make this as safe as possible?
Yeah, that's so true. There are so many auxiliary issues outside of COVID-19, such as what you had mentioned, suicide, domestic health, domestic abuse, family abuse, child abuse, nutrition, malnutrition, accessibility to food. There's a number of auxiliary issues that are directly related to COVID-19 that are sort of just swept under the rug as a result of the virus itself. And it's so, it's kind of silly to me. It's like common sense just leaves the room when you're like, okay, no big deal. We're just going to not talk about those issues and only focus on keeping everything locked up rather than coming from a culture of yes, which is what you're doing, and trying to find solutions to the problem. And the solution or the problem would be reopening, getting kids back out there in a safe and in a health manner. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing in the fight to reopen. I know you touched a little bit on the school side with your input to San Diego Unified. Where are you in regards to leading the fight from the front? Who are you contacting? Have you met with any mayors or political affiliates in order to get reopening to the forefront of the governor's agenda?
Yes, I've contacted the governor in his office. We'll just start there, starting in March. Not much in the way of results as far as getting them to even return a call or an email. And then I spoke to somebody and she was actually not very helpful whatsoever and very rude. But we're still trying, can't give up on that because again, he's the one that is holding the key for all this. So we've got to try to work with him. I started locally within San Diego because they were far ahead. One of our supervisors, Kristen Gaspar, started a group called Game On San Diego. So I jumped on that bandwagon or train because it was further down the tracks than anybody else was in Southern California. And so that actually worked to get us on under this day camp scenario or whatever, and with those guidelines, and it kind of carried over initially up into Orange County and LA and whatever, which was, was sort of the plan, which was the idea. Once somebody has to go first. I have spoken to 3 or 4 mayors and a mayor up for election, somebody running for mayor. And most of them have been actually all of them have been very supportive and have, said, yes, they understand and need to get the kids back on the field. And, they supposedly are trying almost daily to work with the governor's office. And, so far that hasn't helped at this point. So that's all we can really continue to do. I have looked and we've talked to a couple lobbyists about coming up and lobbying. There's some little bit of holdback with that, and there's some decent amount of an expense. But I do think that maybe at some point, I'm hoping that we don't have to get to that point, because I do think if the governor gets this in front of him and sees what it actually means and gets, again, like I stated earlier, take the box of youth sports, shake it up, spread it out to low risk, medium risk, high risk, extremely high risk or something, and say, okay, well, we can open these low risk outdoor sports. We can open these medium with guidelines. We'll work with them. I think he already has some protocols and guidelines with those guidelines, of course, and get those opened up, and then say, okay, we'll take this other part of the youth sports, because I think he's looking at youth sports with a big attendance and having thousands of people there. And for the most part, our games don't have that. We have, 1, 2, we do have bigger sites in some cases, but that can be managed. And I think that I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt and our politicians the benefit of the doubt that they just haven't really looked at this. I know he's a little busy with all the other stuff that's going on, but I'd love to get in a room with him for 15 minutes and plead our case with some of the videos, such as what you said with Tim and some of the other videos that we have from some of our other clubs, to show, look, this is what we're asking for. How do you say no to this? And again, this is not only youth soccer. This is not just about Presidio or Cal South or youth soccer. And again, it's for all of California too. It's not just for Southern California, but this is all youth sports. Wherever they fall, some will be able to be played. If I had a kid that was doing some other sport, like, and I don't want to get wrestling mad at me, but doing wrestling, I wouldn't be sending my kid back. I'd be saying, no, I'm not going to have my kid go back into a sport that is that much contact. But in this case, I really believe that we could do a good job of looking at this and saying, okay, we're going to open this up again under these guidelines. I'm hoping that that's what it would take. Instead of coming out and saying, nope, we're not opening, it doesn't matter. I think that it's just a matter of getting to the right people and maybe getting a better communication and understanding of exactly what that would look like, what this would mean. So again, I'm working with clubs who are doing the similar to what you're talking about with some videos. I'm talking to clubs about getting as much of their connections there in each community, so they can talk to their mayor. They know their mayors and their council people better than I do. And I know some areas are better at that than others as far as that. All of them want to. Some of them are more connected within their own community. But it's going to take a group effort to get this thing to be, to turn the switch on this youth sports. I think it takes a group effort. It can't be just me or Presidio or, probably even this summit. But this certainly can be a start to make people aware, because that awareness should become awareness in comparison to what's already out there should, I think, open it up, which is really from the kids' standpoint, going back again, this is why I'm doing this, is for the kids. And this is so much needed. I can't be passionate enough. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I have fought the cause for these kids, not only in these youth sports and soccer in San Diego Unified. Some of our San Diego Unified people don't like me so much at the higher level, because I go fight for the kids, for what's right for these kids, sometimes at the detriment of my own family, because I take up time fighting for all the kids and maybe not as much time at that. But anyway, that's what it is. So for a fact, and most of the people of Presidio know, because they've been around me for 25 years, that I fight this. It's a real fight and a real passion, and it is about the kids. So there's a lot of businesses involved, but still, first and foremost for me, it is about these kids, and we've got to take care of these kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, you make a very compelling argument. Love the fact to hear that you are fighting, leading from the front, meeting with mayors, pushing with Ms. Gaspar, fighting to get this reopening. And there's a ton of evidence that you guys have. I mean, there's videos, there's documentation, there's statistics, there's doctors who are coming out with the true impact, the scope of the work, data, evidence. There's just a ton of information at your disposal, which means it should be at their disposal, whoever they are in the position of power. So it definitely seems like there should be a different plan in place than the current one. Let's pivot away from the impact to the club, and let's bring this, a little bit closer to home. And it actually works perfectly, it segues perfectly off of the last portion of the conversation, which was your member-first approach. You have always been a great people manager. You've always been a great leader. I've worked numerous tournaments, and how well tournaments go off from start to finish with all the moving parts, and having so many people compliment us because of what a great job and how easy and seamless it was. There's numerous examples that I can talk about from a leadership members first examples. Let's talk about how that's helped you during this time period, not only in the COVID-19 crisis, but also as you transition from being the president of Presidio to then now the president of Cal South.
Okay, well, I guess it goes back to the beginning somewhat of getting involved in this, and getting involved in youth soccer 28 years ago or something, and then becoming the president of what Mira Mesa Rattler Soccer Association, kind of thrown into that after maybe 6 months of being in the league, and then thrown into a tournament. And so I've actually done a little bit of, a lot probably of everything, from being a parent, an assistant coach, knowing nothing about soccer. I wasn't a soccer guy. I was a hockey and baseball guy, as you know. So I didn't know anything about soccer. My thing was I put my stepson into soccer because he needed something to do at 6 years old. I was of the mindset that if I'm going to put him in this sport, I probably need to be involved. So I became his assistant coach at that time, and the head coach happened to be the president, and the president was going through some of his own personal issues, and all of a sudden I became the Presidio rep for our club, pretty close, not just within a couple months after being on. And so within about 6 or 8 months or something, I was asked to be the president because the president was actually stepping down or something. So I've ran that club. I've run tournaments. I've been a coach, assistant coach, head coach, a parent. Three kids have already gone through the entire program at basically U5 to U19. I've got now this other that was at U5 to now U15. So I've sort of seen everything. I always come from the members, and usually it's from the players, from the kids and the parents, because that's who we are. Presidio and Cal South don't make anything. We don't make widgets. We don't make anything. We are here to serve our members. And so I've always come from that. Now, members aren't always right. So there's times we have to, we always do the right thing, and you can't do exactly what the members say. But you always have to come from that mindset. I can do that pretty easily because I've been so involved, and I'm still involved. Because I have a daughter that's playing, I'm part of a club, I see that, I've been a manager, I've been, like I said, a coach, assistant coach, vice director for Presidio, vice president for Presidio, president for Presidio, now the executive director at Presidio. Again, you thrust into the job of, hold on, helicopter flying.
No problem.
Into the president's position at Cal South. Part of that election process was probably because my member first mentality, and that's what it still is. So the member first approach, obviously, if you really understand who your client is and who your members are, or who your market, what your market is, I guess, stated better. Our market is those players. Again, like I said, we don't make anything. We don't sell anything. Our job is to represent those players. I have been representing them for a long time, and I will continue to represent them to the best of my ability, always thinking about, again, the players, the parents, the clubs, and you have to come from that standpoint. That's how the better decision-making can be had from there. So to manage this from that standpoint, it's a little bit easier. Also, you have to be, I used to call me the fixer, fix everything, because you have to be able to try, again, positive thinking and whatever, to try to say yes, as I said earlier, instead of no. Figure out a way to get things done rather than figure out a way not to do it. It's real easy to say, no, you can't do it. It's it's a lot harder to say, well, it's going to be tough, but yeah, let's figure it out. Let's work on it. Let's do it. So even some of that mentality, I think, even though I can get passionate and kind of heated through some discussions, as most people seeing this that know me know that, it still comes in of a more of a calmness and a positive attitude to be able to manage those stressors. It's tough with this because there's so many other stressful issues for all of us, not just me, not just you. Everybody's got their own issues going on at home, at work, within their family, outside family, whatever it might be. But my calling, I think now, maybe this is why I became president of Cal South. My calling right now is to try to do what I can do to best serve and help these kids get back on that field in a safe manner, as safe as possible. And so I guess managing that is trying to manage that with a positive attitude and going forward, trying to be optimistic, having no idea really what the future is going to bring, but let's deal with the now and best manage the future as we go. And again, as I've said over and over again, the best way to manage this, I truly believe, is getting these kids back on the field, giving them some hope. We've taken all the hope. If you watch the news, it's horrible. Everything is bad and everybody's fighting and doing whatever. These kids need this outlet. These kids need to be able to come on there and see some normalcy, whatever that turns out to be in the future. It's going to be different than it was before this. They still need to see that. We owe it to them to do that. And any of us that decide we're just going to bury our head in the sand or not be part of that should be ashamed, because we owe it to these kids. These are kids looking for us to help them solve some of these problems. We can't solve them all. We can't take care of the virus and make it go away. You know, it's a real world out there, but there are things we can do. And until we all do that and put our efforts toward it, honestly, we as adults should be ashamed of ourselves.
Powerful words right there. It's going to take one solidarity, one group effort, everyone coming together in order to get this situation, let's just say, because COVID-19 isn't just a virus. There's so many other issues and so many other problems that have come from this. It's going to take a group effort in order to get this to be in the rearview mirror. But Cal South, Presidio, specifically soccer here in Southern California, has got a great person leading the ship. Thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciate you taking the time to join us in this conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a great evening.